Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Pamela Winn. I am the founder of RestoreHER, based here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am also a member of the Advisory Council for the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, which is why we're here today. NORCAT is featuring this webinar in recognition of Women's History Month. We're going to be talking about breaking barriers and understanding the experience of incarcerated women. I'm going to be moderating today. I have three amazing, impactful women with me on this panel. We have Naquasia Pollard, Dolores Canales, and Lauren Johnson.
Hey, everyone.
We're excited to be here today, especially always excited when we can bring awareness to women's issues that are behind the walls, that aren't able to speak out for themselves and voice their concerns. So let's get into it. So if we would start with introductions, Dolores, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Hi, yes. My name is Dolores Canales. I'm Director of Community Outreach with the Bail Project, and I'm also a board member for National Religious Campaign Against Torture and co-founder of California Families Against Solitary Confinement. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Naquasia, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Naquasia Pollard. I'm the founder and executive director of Pure Legacee, which is a nonprofit organization that mentors young women. And I'm based out of New York. Thank you for having me. And I'm also a NERCAT Advisory Council person.
And Lauren, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Johnson. I'm based in Austin, which is a beautiful place, except we're surrounded by Texas. And I am the Justice Director for Dream.org, which focuses on closing doors of prisons and opening doors of opportunity. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm also an advisory member for the for NERCAT. So hi.
And I like to add that we are all four of us are directly impacted women, formerly incarcerated, serving time. So today, when we talk about these issues, we are talking from lived experience, not what we heard, not what we read, but what we know as having overcome the system. And so let's start off with you, Naquasia. So can you discuss the role of educational programs in prisons and their impact on reducing recidivism among women?
That's a great question. For me, being directly impacted, I obtained both my degrees from Marymount Manhattan College while I was incarcerated, serving 15 years. So I know that when you have an education, that is an equalizer for when you come home to enter a room. You know, oftentimes us being in our roles, we lead with our incarceration instead of our educational background, which really saves us from being re-incarcerated, right? It addresses things that, where people are, have this stereotype of women, having a stereotype of women being incarcerated. So for you to obtain your degree while you are incarcerated, or any educational background, it's it's an equalizer, and it also helps you for your reentry process.
Agreed. Dolores.
Yes.
How does the bail system disproportionately affect women, particularly those from marginalized communities? And what reforms do you advocate for?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And as before I go on to speak, I just want to lift up all the women, right? Even the women that are joining in to participate and watch, and just really acknowledging you and your power and your strength, and that we are here speaking today, but that we all have a voice. And so thank you for today allowing me this opportunity, as we all have stories and we all have, you know, these positions. And so as far as the impact, you know, we know that many women, they suffer from mental health issues because of a history of trauma or abuse or even substance use disorders. And also, women are disproportionately affected because they're often the caregivers in the family. So when you remove the caregiver from the family, and then sometimes the family members cannot take the children that might have been left behind because they have a record or because they don't have the financial means, and then the families get separated into foster care and different foster homes, and then begins the whole cycle of family separation. And then we know that bail, you know, it's a monetary vested interest, you know, it's a financial gain. So therefore, if you have the money to bail out, you can buy your freedom. But if you don't, so when we're talking about marginalized communities that often might not have those resources, they are very negatively affected. And I have some articles and some data that I'll drop in the chat, you know, so that you can read more and read further. And there's so much movement around women and bailout, like with Essie Justice Group and the Black Mama Bailout, of course. And the Bail Project also has some more information on that. And I will provide the information in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, in Georgia, we had legislation here that they were passing that will ban organizations from being able to bail people out, which I thought was very unfortunate.
Yes, we're seeing that more and more. I'm on the policy team as well, and we are seeing this, that the more that we are pushing towards bail and towards ending the use of bail and just providing, you know, community support, pretrial freedom, pretrial release with community support, we are seeing that as we have our data showing that it actually works, that there is more legislation around this. But then we're also seeing where there's a lot of organizations now carrying on with like the primary caretaker bills, or, you know, even in California, we have legislation about keeping the family together, keeping the caretaker free and able to continue on with the family. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And on that note, Lauren, how do legislative policies currently fail incarcerated women, and what key policy changes are needed to address these failures?
So, I mean, you know, we've already heard of a few as we've been kind of already starting this conversation. Primary caretaker legislation. A lot of states have passed dignity for incarcerated women bills. And there's lots of room for more work to happen. The issue, though, is that there are a lot of laws on the books already. And the people who are in charge of making sure that those things are implemented do not make sure that those things are implemented. So what you have is these people who are ostensibly there to hold us accountable for not following the laws are themselves not following the laws. So they're, you know, the way that prisons are currently run, minimum standards are not being met, haven't been met in a long time. And it's only gotten worse as short staffing has, you know, hit all the different employment people. I'm apparently losing my vocabulary. It's not even Friday yet. But, you know, I think that's one of the frustrating things to me is, you know, it takes a lot to change policy at a state or federal level. And so to have so many robust laws on the books, like primary caregiver and women's dignity, Texas passed a really robust dignity bill in 2017 or 2019. And, you know, a lot of states, when we talk about dignity for incarcerated women, usually it has at least two components, which is not shackling women during birth and pregnancy, and then requiring the facility to give women feminine hygiene products, which, you know, it's 2024, and it's kind of strange that we're still having to fight for feminine hygiene products. It's weird that that's a conversation that we have to have still. And even after we've passed a bill, and I'll tell you, as an aside, like I think the primary reason that that bill passed in Texas was because so many of the male legislators were uncomfortable talking about tampons on the floor, and they just wanted to pass the bill so they didn't have to talk about it anymore. But now that it's in effect, I'm still talking to women on the inside that are still having to show bloody clothes as proof that they need feminine hygiene products. Like nothing has really changed the law. So we've got a lot of laws on the books that we just need to see them implemented and for people to follow the rules that exist on the books.
Yeah, and to add to that, lack of data around women is also a problem that causes lack of implementation and no transparency for us to be able to oversee to make sure that these laws are being carried out. Naquasia, in your experience, what are the most significant barriers to reentry for women, and how does your organization address these challenges?
For one, thank you for that question. I've noticed for me working with a young population of young women from the ages of 16 to 24, especially young women coming out of foster care, because foster care is also another prison in the pipeline. Even while I was incarcerated, several of the women that I was incarcerated with were coming out of foster care or just facing homelessness after they aged out. I noticed that one of the challenges is that, when you are trying to assist young women and give them tools in order to heal, they reject it because that's not what they're used to. They're used to having practices of not addressing their issues head on because they don't know where to go. They don't have enough resources. They don't have the knowledge to acknowledge the fact that they even have a problem because it's so normal for them because this is the way they have been living their lives. And it's heartbreaking, right? Young women, especially young women, they are our future. They are the ones that's going to be taking care of us when we are older. I'm not old, but it's real. And that is a challenge when you are trying to let a young person know that I am here for you. You can trust me. It's not easy. So when a young person comes to me and she's still operating in her trauma, you have to understand that that's where she's operating from because that's all she knows.
Right.
And it's hard. It's difficult. It's a challenge and a barrier because you want to help this young person, but you learn sometimes that you just have to allow them to come back to you, right? To see what you were saying, that you wasn't trying to harm them. And one of the barriers that I come across, especially with young women that's impacted by systems, period, either they're coming from incarceration or foster care, they don't trust. There is a lot of lack of trust because all these people said that they were going to help them, right? All these people made promises that were broken. So, I'm coming in, they just look at me as somebody just to make them a promise. And it's difficult. And a lot of these young women lack accountability when they do operate in their trauma and when they cause harm even towards you as the provider. It's not it's a challenge. And the way Pure Legacee approaches the challenge is because we are a restorative organization. I don't care about the numbers. I care about the individual and what their process look like and how they're going to continue on in a way that's healthy for them and able to give it back to their community, and to pull another young girl that was in their situation up, which is not easy. So, when they come to me, when they come not only to me, to the organization, because I do have a team that's super dope, we analyze like where they're operating from, and 9 times out of 10 they're operating from their trauma. And the only thing we can do as an organization is to provide you tools and to provide you resources and opportunities, and it's up to the young person to take those opportunities.
Yeah, and hopefully they do. Dolores, in your outreach efforts, what have you found to be the most effective strategies for engaging communities in support of incarcerated women?
Well, I do have to say, because it just all depends who you're talking to. And I think one of the most important things is that we really have to know our audience, because our audience, there's a lot of people that they know kind of what's going on. But I think just raising awareness. We know that women are the fastest growing group of incarcerated people, and a vast majority are of reproductive age. In jails and prisons, we hear over and over again of the lack of health care for women. As Lauren was just talking, even about something so simple as a monthly cycle, but yet what women have had to go through and what still do have to go through. So raising awareness in those issues that a lot of people just honestly do not know or understand. I think another strategy that we have used is even going inside the jails and the prisons and taking a team in there. Recently, we were able to go into Central California Women's Facility, and a member of NERCAT, Michael Saavedra, joined us. And it was overwhelming to be talking to over 2,000 women. And every single one of them wanted to share a little bit about their story, a little bit about their experience, especially when it came to being housed in solitary confinement. When you're thrown in a cell, isolated and alone, and you start your period, or you're having cramps, or you're having a mental issue, and you're banging on that door and you can get absolutely nobody to help you. It's just like your screams are silenced and you're all alone, and that just adds to the trauma that was already there before you even got incarcerated, right? So it builds on it. And that's why we have to start really understanding that jails and prisons are not the solution, but the problem, and cause further trauma. And so I think one of the most important things, as I said, is just knowing your audience, raising issues that people really need to know about, the sexual abuse that's been going on, that is now being highlighted across the different states. And this has been going on for decades. This is nothing new. We all know that. Right. Every single one here on this panel knows that. And just now, decades later, are we getting, some traction in that area. So I think raising the very serious issues that are going on like that.
Yeah. Dolores, could you share a case study or a story where community support significantly impacted an incarcerated woman's life?
God, there's so many, and that's why I was getting all these links with different information. But if you want to go on the Bail Project website, we do have some there. We have some actual stories and case studies. But I mean, definitely, I do know a story. I know a story of my own where I was facing a life sentence, and it was behind drugs, but because of California 3-strike law, that I was able to bail out, but that's why I was facing life, because of the drugs. And I was able to bail out. And my sentence went from a life sentence to 9 years. I would still be in prison right now on those charges, because that's what they were looking at. The judge was not even looking any further than that. But having that time to be out on bail and get a community. I never had a community before in the sense that I had when I got out on bail. So having that community, and having the community show up to court with me, having the community write letters of reference for me, being employed and showing that I could be a productive member of society and contribute. And all of this made such a huge difference that I did not end up with life. But yet I still have friends in prison right now, still serving sentences for far more minor crimes than I had, that I actually won the life sentence on. But everything, it all came down to, I had the opportunity to fight my case from the street, and they didn't.
Right. Harn, from your work, how have you seen art or creative expression serve as a tool for healing and rehabilitation for incarcerated women?
Oh gosh. There are a lot of examples of that. I'll start with this. The last time that I was incarcerated, I was in the county jail, and the only way that you could get a contact visit with your children was to join this one program. Contact visits were pretty much gone away with. At that point, they were starting to install the video visitation. So even regular visitation wasn't, something where you could interact and bond with your children and put your hand up against the glass. It was through the video system, which is kind of shoddy. Um, and so anyway, I had young children at the time, and I would have done anything to be able to hug them at that point. And so I joined this program, and there were two organizations, one that came in and did theater and creative writing with the women, and another one that came in and talked about relationships and community and creative expression and communication. And for the theater one, it was fun because here you are in jail, and everything in your life is uncertain. You don't know if you're going to lose your car, your house, your kids, your job. Everything is kind of falling apart in front of you. You're waiting to find out if you're going to be convicted, how much time you're going to serve, where they're going to send you. And it's just a really very stressful time where you really don't have a lot of control over anything. And we walked into the classroom, and there was this lady with thick trifocal glasses. And I looked at her, and she was our facilitator. And I was just thinking, oh no, these women are going to run her over. And she came in, and she just treated everybody with dignity and respect. And she created a space where people felt safe and were able to open up to being able to express themselves and play theater games, which, I don't know how many people in here have experienced theater games, but it's really silly. And, here you are in this place where you expect people to kind of be hard and kind of closed off. And here you had these grown women like being silly and laughing and giggling, and some of them for the first time sober, right? Like a lot of the women in that room hadn't done anything fun or silly or laughed without the use of a substance prior to that in a really long time. And so, in that space to create that was amazing and beautiful. And it's just kind of one of the instances that I can kind of share with you about how those opportunities for women to be able to express themselves. I think earlier we were talking, Naquasia was talking about the girls that she works with. And I think all anybody wants is to be seen and to be heard and to be understood. And I think having these opportunities for the arts and creativity gives people a moment to experience that.
Great, thank you. I agree. Naquasia, how do you navigate the challenges of implementing trauma-informed practices within institutions that are not traditionally designed to address mental health?
Thank you for that question. So Pure Legacee was invited to go into Rikers Island recently, and to do a 6-month workshop with the young women that are held there. It's disheartening. For one, like to even go through the orientation process is like unhuman. It's unrealistic, right? They corrections tend to forget that for one, we are working with human beings. I'm a human, and I once was them. I was incarcerated at 19 years old, and we didn't have anyone coming in helping us, making us feel that we were human as young people. So, me and my team going into Rikers Island is our duty, and it's my humanness that makes me want to give them back their voices for them to be heard, in order for them to and we have to be, we have to have a set of tools in order for us not to be triggered in the midst of assisting someone else, because I hate the word help. We assisting. So for me to go into this institution where a lot of the young women are on mental medication that are a high dosage that they shouldn't be on, And they're only 19 and 18 and 20 and 21. And I'm like, you have your whole life ahead of you. But they don't see that in that moment. Doing the intake process, I added, were you ever in solitary confinement? And majority of them were, right? This is a whole house. This is a house of like 40 young girls. And more than half were in solitary confinement, right? Because they was either fighting, because they don't know how to keep, they don't have healthy communication, they don't have healthy boundaries because they don't know what that is, because they always been violated outside before they even came to prison. Even for me, I was violated before I even came to prison. I learned that the United States incarcerate trauma, and it will continue to incarcerate trauma until us freedom fighters fight for them not to be incarcerated. Like, these young people are misguided. They don't even have a sense of self of what they want to do, because they look at the social media and the TV, and they glued to the TV. Like, to read a book and to internalize like where they can take care of themselves. So for us to go into Rikers Island, it's a big step. And it's also a big responsibility on the organization that we are willing to take on. But the one thing that when I was creating the curriculum for us to go into Rikers Island, is to be intentional on the mental and well-being of a person, a human being that may have been raped, may have been molested, may have been a survivor of sex trafficking. And these are young people with grown people issues. And how can I, in the organization, in this curriculum that I'm even presenting to them, how they're going to internalize it in order for them to work on their mental health, and how to address their trauma.
Speaking of Rikers and abuse and assaults, I received the article today from the Gothamist about women in Rikers, about late night sex assaults, invasive searches of 700 plus women. Although, I know that it happens and it's been happening for years and years and years, it was still hurtful just seeing those words, and just seeing that. What are your thoughts about that?
And let's talk about the young girls and the women that's being held at Rosa M. Singer that hasn't said anything.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 700 women that said that they were sexually abused by officers and by their peers. But majority of it comes from male officers being in this environment and playing on a young woman's vulnerability and her trauma. It hurts. I know that the only way that I can help them and continue to come in is to let them know that they have a voice and they can report it. And if you need me to support you in that, let's go.
Yeah.
Right? I'm gonna support you in that, and and these are that, like, they young enough to be my daughter. Like, my daughter's only 20. Mm-hmm. And for, a young person to come and tell you, like, an officer was in their cell last night, what do you do with that without them being retaliated against?
Right.
And I have to work through those barriers and go to the higher ups and report it even after I leave the facility. That's what it's told for us to do, right? But why would I leave that young person still vulnerable? Right. I remember when I was in Rikers Island, I was pregnant with my daughter, and they had me strip searched in the cell on the search, a whole unit search. Now, mind you, it's a woman searching me, but men is walking up the hallway. Right. So you want me to take off all my clothes And like, where is no help, is no boundaries, right? And there's no sense of safety, because I didn't feel safe, and I wound up going to the YB pen, right, as a punishment, because I wouldn't take off my clothes, because this man is walking up and down the hall. You want me to be butt naked, and I'm pregnant, and I'm not doing it. So I had to take a stand in that, and they kept me in the YB pen for hours, right? That search happened at like 11 o'clock at night. I'm still in YB pen 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
There's no sense of safety. So, when I'm mindful of that when I go into Rikers.
Yeah. Lauren, do you want to add anything to that about this article?
Texas isn't Rikers Island, but I think the point that Naquasia started to make about the women who didn't speak up, like thinking about the fact that so many people don't speak up because you're being punished on top of being punished if you do, right? Like, not only are you dealing with the trauma of the assault, but if you report it, then you're going to be thrown in solitary confinement. You're going to be have your items, the little bits of comfort that you have inside of a prison, your property, your books, your commissary, the little bit of things that bring you any kind of solace in jail get taken away from you. And so, and you don't know for how long. It could be for days, it could be for weeks, it could be for months. You're also potentially getting your visits taken away, your phone privileges, so you're just being punished and punished and punished and punished while you're being punished. And therefore those 700 accounts is a really big number of people that were willing to go ahead and speak out in spite of immense personal loss to themselves when they do. I've had women contact me that their boss in a boiler room would take them to areas without cameras, and they didn't know what to do, and beg for help, but also not know what that help should look like, because they also don't want to be punished. They don't want potentially their parole date to be taken away from them. This could cost them their freedom to get the autonomy of their body back.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I'll add.
Dolores, you want to add any words?
Thank you. And Naquasia, thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent. I mean, I can't imagine, just giving birth and then being on display for all, and just how they walk through, like, if nothing, like if we're not even to be respected, right, or our privacy is not to be honored. And so I know that is a lot. And so really, I thank you for being open about that. And one thing that I want to explain too, I think a lot of women often went silent or even still remain silent because they look at it like, well, I was having sex with that CO, but I allowed it. They didn't throw me on the bed, hold me down, and rape me. I was willing. But there is no such thing as consensual sex in prison. And another thing, this is why sometimes it ends up being allowed, because there is such a deprivation, such a lack of humanity in these institutions, that something as simple as a cup of ice is looked at as gold. Literally, I mean, I've been there. I'm not exaggerating it. I have been there, where I used to ask my boss, please, let's go get ice, and he used to say, well, do you really need ice? And I would say, well, do you use it at home for your family? I mean, we're in 116-degree temperature. And then when you go back to the unit, people will be offering to buy it, to give you anything. So when you look at that, when you look at a CO willing to give you a cup of ice in 116-degree temperature, and the trade-offs, right, that we begin to think nothing of our body. We use it as a commodity. We use it as a trade. And then we don't even realize that is rape. That is rape, because there is no such thing as consensual sex in prison. And we shouldn't have to be selling our bodies for a cup of ice or a soda or whatever it is that they're offering to bring. When they took the tobacco in California prisons, if I tell you, that opened up a landmine. Before, it was drugs, LPing on drugs. But now here, all they had to do was bring in a little bit of tobacco. And there was some women that would be absolutely willing to do anything. It was worse than drugs when I saw women going after tobacco. I had never seen anything like it. And so when you look at the things that are used to take advantage of our vulnerabilities, of our the lack of everything that's provided in there, and then how that's also looked at as a power over us. Like if I just give them something, they're going to give me something. But really, that is also rape. That should not be looked at as consensual. That should not be looked at as it was okay. And that should not be looked at as, I'm wrong because I did this. No, not at all. They are in positions of authority. They are in positions to oversee and as caretakers and care providers. And so, I just really want to reiterate that, because I will never forget when I went into prison and I was 18 years old, and my little friend, she was her first time there too and everything. And on the receiving yard, they did not allow you to have sodas. And I remember she told me she had sex with the guard for a Pepsi. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, what were you thinking? A soda, a Pepsi. But then when you stop and think about it, and you've been like in solitary confinement, they don't allow you to have sodas. So when that craving hits you, it's like something you cannot imagine if you have not actually experienced it. A craving for something so simple that you would just go to your refrigerator, pop open a can of Pepsi and drink it. And then when you have a guard doing that right in front of you, literally to where they're doing the pop open sound, and and you could see that, and you could see their throat moving as they drink and they gulp, and it's like you're drooling, right? And so I just want you to try to understand these positions that women often find themselves in that make them willing to do absolutely anything. And it is rape.
Right. It is. It is.
And like to second that notion what Dolores just said, they take advantage of your vulnerability. And they like, it's like they tease you, like they do it on purpose. And it's just I remember a guard was sitting eating his dinner, and I remember a girl was like, let me get a piece of that, let me get a shrimp. And I'm like, and then but like she was washing his dishes after he finished eating, because she gave him a shrimp in his area where the refrigerator and things was. So, and he went back there with her, right? Just to eat something that we weren't entitled to have. And I'm like, well, damn, like, how can we break these cycles of trauma? Because that's not her first time doing something for something. That's not her first time probably having sex for something that she wanted or she needed. And like it really puts us in a harmful predicament when we are conforming to things that we want and we think we need, right? Because we are not used to having. So that, that's is just continue the cycle of trauma.
Right. One last question, then we're gonna open up for questions from our audience. Lauren, what role do you believe technology can play in improving conditions for incarcerated women and aiding their reentry process?
We've got a lot of opportunity in front of us. I'm a little bit nervous about how it's going to be used, right? So over the, shortly after the pandemic started, some of the telecom companies really took advantage of the moment and got tablets inside of our prisons and jails. Some had already had it, but it just really rolled out in a big way. And with that, like, I think, I've talked to people on the inside that like it has made their life immeasurably better already. And it's very limited in what's available right now. But at the same time, so So there's a lot of opportunity, right? We can do a lot on these tablets. We can put educational programming, we can put spiritual programming, we can put rehabilitative stuff. We can create opportunities for people to build community, although I suspect that's going to be the last thing if they ever do it, because there's such a need to control the contact with the outside world. But I think the more stable relationships that people are able to build with the outside world, the stronger their chances are when they come home. So there's all these opportunities that exist. And at the same time, in Texas last year, there was a bill that would have created a felony offense if somebody was caught tampering with a tablet. And tampering wasn't defined, it was very loose. And I went up to the director of the agency and I was like, tell me what other machines or property inside of this system somebody can mess with, break, destroy, and get a felony offense for. And he was like, well, there isn't one. He's like, we came up with this because it's the same as having a contraband cell phone. And we think that, if people tamper with the device to, jailbreak it and make it so that people can, use the system, go outside of the system that they can monitor, then we want to be able to give the same charges. And I was like, okay, but let me ask you this. How many times have you charged somebody with a felony for a contraband cell phone? Because they're catching them a lot. It's a thing that happens all day, every day inside of the prison system. And he's like, most of the time we don't take that into court. And I was like, exactly. So, you don't want to clog up the court system. You have remedies available to you within the system that you have to punish people when they get caught doing the things that they're not supposed to be doing. Why do you need to add a felony offense for this private company? So there's a lot of opportunity, but there's also like a dark side that I think we need to be careful and be thoughtful about how we're going to approach some of the issues that are, bound to come up, because we're dealing with human beings that have wants and desires and, want what they want, and have been, again, kind of back to what Dolores was saying about this, like, scarcity mentality, right? We've created an environment where people are just lacking. They're lacking physical and human touch. They're lacking community. They're lacking basic needs. And then, they have an opportunity to meet some of those needs through the channels that are available to them, and they're going to take advantage of that. And so if we can plan ahead and be thoughtful and intentional about how to approach these things, then I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
I agree. So at this time, we want to open it up to everyone that's on the call. If you have any questions that for any of the ladies that you want to ask, please feel free to ask or put them in the chat.
Go ahead, Ron.
Hey, I did raise my hand old school way here. We know, NERCAT, all of us working together to try to shut down solitary confinement all over the country. And we know that it's so hard on everybody. And you've talked about some of the issues, being women and being in solitary confinement, being isolated. Women are by nature more relational. And it seems like that is an additional damage beyond maybe what I would think a man would experience. And I don't know if there's any studies, anecdotes, things that you can talk about how solitary just as a construct within a prison is so much harder on women, just because of not being able to relate to family, their children, that kind of stuff, harder than men. I mean, I don't want to put it on any kind of a hierarchy or anything, but just to hear if you have some thoughts around that.
I remember when I was in solitary confinement, right, in Bedford Hills, and I was the only one that wasn't asleep by the time child came around, because they just, like, a lot of the women just couldn't deal with being isolated for all that time, And I remember I only had 60 days, right? And they had like a year and a half, and like they just couldn't deal. For one, you couldn't yell outside the cell. The only time you did get to have any human interaction was when you went out to rec. And if the officer was nice, I remember one officer used to do it one at a time, just to be mean, right? So we wouldn't be able to talk to each other. And I'm like, and to the point where I remember not going outside. So I was really locked in literally for 24 hours. And, you know, I remember a young girl, she hung up, attempted to commit suicide while we was in solitary confinement because she was like, "It's nobody to talk to." And mind you, at that time I was only 22, and she was only 21, and she attempted to take her own life because she couldn't deal. She was like, "I hear voices. We can't talk to nobody. Like, what do you want us to do?" And I remember her saying that to the officer, and the officer was like, "If you don't be quiet, I'm gonna write you up again." And I'm like, "Be quiet." So I was like, "Well, let me not say nothing because I don't want to be here inside this wall no longer than I have to." In New York State, the women are in individual cells, and the men are in, like, they either double bunked. But this being a woman inside, not being able, like you said, to even have, "You good?" or "You need a pen?" or "Pass the magazine," you was getting written a ticket, depending on who the officer was. So, like, they made you not be human, and I remember, like, I can't wait till these 60 days is over. It was like agony because like I said, I was in there for 24 hours because I didn't go outside to rec. So I was like, all right, let me just read a book. I slept, I read, I prayed, I did all of those things. And I was just like, man, but imagine somebody that was being held there for over a year, over 90 days to 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one of the things about, for myself, I'm only speaking from my personal experience and, not everybody's, but for me, there was such a sense of community on, the prison yard with our room, the way we did holidays, the way we did cooking and just everything, sharing meals and, our family members and hearing about it and, going to visit and everything. And then when you're put into isolation and you miss that, right? So when you're first arrested, you're torn from your community, and you just have that. Oh God, if any of y'all have ever been placed in handcuffs, you know that dread that comes immediately over you. And then when you're in the back of that car and your stomach's turning and you're getting booked in and you're just like ripped from everything that you knew as a part of your life. So you get that. Well, me, I can't speak for everybody. I'm sorry. So when I got put in isolation and those handcuffs come, and it's that ripping of your soul all over again. It's literally that re-traumatization of going back to when you were arrested. Like, everything that I knew, everything that made me feel safe, everyone that I love now, you're being separated, you're being isolated, and you're thrown and you're all alone. And so I think just that feeling and that trauma that it brings you, even being placed back into isolation, being placed back into solitary. I would be in solitary and I would get anxiety, but it wasn't something that anyone even knew. I wouldn't yell out my door, "I'm getting anxiety." I would just lay there and breathe through it. And my heart would be pounding and the walls felt like they were closing in because I just longed so bad for my community, for my sense of human, of human interaction and missing that so much. And then in solitary confinement where I was housed, for any time you came out of your cell, you had to be stripped completely naked and go through the whole strip, even just to take a shower. You had to be stripped completely naked in front of the officers, do the whole cough and squat and lift your breasts and cough and turn around and shake out your hair and pull your ears. And I mean, just goes on, you know, show your toes and in between your toes. And then you could put your gown back on and got escorted, shackled and handcuffed, and then got locked into the shower. I mean, but so when you think of it, for any time that door opened, you couldn't even feel a sense of, oh, my door's opened. You felt a sense of like degradation, shame, dehumanization, all because of what you were going to have to go through to walk outside that door. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, I just want to say this piece, you know, when you are a woman that's in solitary confinement, it's just different, right? You know, women, we have our menstruals, you know, cramps and all of those things being a woman, right? And there's no humanness in it. Like, I remember an officer, I was like, I need sanitary napkins because you only allowed a certain amount in the cell with you, period, because you in solitary confinement. And I'm like, I need more sanitary napkins. And he was like, use tissue. And I was like, use tissue? Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to soil you through my clothes. I can't wash my clothes. The sink only spits water. It don't even, the flow of water don't even come out. So really, and I remember a female officer coming behind him, and she was like, "Here," you know, like she was being human that day, right? And I was like, "Thank you." But it's just a sense of like Dolores said, like you being dehumanized often, like even like to down to when you take a shower, how you take your meals. You gotta be standing against the wall when they open your slot, and you know it's just even to eat. Like I'm entitled to eat, and yeah, and like you know her saying that, I'm like, damn, like we survived that, all of us.
Yeah,
We survived it, and thank you for NERCAT having this platform for us to even voice what's really going on behind closed doors.
Yes. Yes, on that note, we're down to our last few minutes, and I want to thank NORCAT for bringing awareness to incarcerated women. So often we are not thought about. We are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the priorities. So to be able to have this time today to speak about the issues that are important to women and to be able to touch, thank you, ladies, because you all touched a lot of different areas that most people are probably not even aware, of what's going on with women in these different, areas. So thank you, ladies, for coming on today and speaking. So I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to give a call to action to our followers and our listeners and the folks on the call today. Lauren, would you like to start?
Sure. So first of all, there's a lot of amazing work that's happening all across the country. And I would encourage you, like the issues that you've heard about today or through NERCAT, like just plug in with the different organizations that are doing really important work on all of these issues. Dream.org is where I work, and what, follow us on our socials and see what we're up to. Plug in with us if it makes sense to you, if we're working on things that you care about. And if not, keep looking until you find the organization that is working on things that you are drawn to and are passionate about, and get plugged in.
Thank you, Lauren. Dolores?
Yes, thank you so much. In California, we have AB 280, the California Mandela bill. And then we also have AB 2160, which Pamela Winn, that's part of your organization. And this bill would authorize any pregnant or postpartum defendant to request a stay of execution of their sentence, and a lot more. But these are bills that you can follow. You could also go on the NERCAT website, the Bail Project website, and the unlocktheboxcampaign.org, which I'll drop those in the chat right now. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dolores. And could you finish us up, Naquasia?
Well, the issues that I'm bringing to the table is, the call to action that I'm asking is, interact with our youth. They're not gonna bite. They just need to be guided. Stop saying that, oh, I don't want to deal with them. And just don't forget your 17-year-old self. And you can follow Pure Legacee at www.purelegacee PureLegacee.org and all our social media handles to see. Now we're doing to rock the vote early registration for young people and women that have been experiencing domestic violence, so their address is non-disclosed, so they'll be able to utilize their voices to vote. So that's what we're working on right now.
Thank you, Naquasia. Thank you, everyone. We heard from everyone important issues. Please follow each one of the ladies and the work that they're doing. Also follow NORCAT and Unlock the Box, and let's halt and end solitary confinement for all. Thank you.
Thank you.